NFL cutdown day was yesterday, and of course, there's a lot to reflect on, some trades, some unresolved issues. We're breaking it all down today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Have you caught your breath yet?
No.
Swimming in it.
Swimming, Kyle. Fully swimming.
And we're not done yet. The Marcus
No.
Peters quote, I think we ain't done yet. Today's going to be crazy too.
Crazy, perhaps crazier.
Well, yeah, so today's more gymnastics, right? Yesterday was kind of strategic decisions, and teams have these extreme versions of their rosters where they have unsustainable numbers in surplus or in scarcity at certain position rooms, like the Patriots with one quarterback and two running backs, right? You look at that, and it's like, hey, y'all got some work to do, right? But it's strategically, I guess that's we know what we have. We know who we don't want to risk exposing to the waiver wire. We're going to keep these guys, and then we'll put players on IR, or we'll put players on whatever. And then from there, we can stash and readjust. So your team's roster might look funny, and that's okay because it's not done yet.
It never is done, though, really, right? I mean,
but
you want to set the bolt nuts and bolts of the thing here before week one, but it's a fluid situation all season long. Kyle, you mentioned the Patriots. One quarterback on the roster, two running backs, two tight ends. The one quarterback, Mac Jones. Is he the starter? Will Belichick admit that he's the starter at this point?
Yes. I would venture a guess to say that Belichick acknowledges that he is the starter.
The interesting part here is Bailey Zappe. He gets released or waived, and he's subject to waivers. And you never know in terms of who gets claimed and who doesn't. But, I mean, there were a point in time last year where some people thought Bailey Zappe could potentially take over that job from Mac Jones. And
Zappe mania.
Fast forward a few months, and he didn't make the opening 53. They were comfortable exposing him to all 31 other teams for them to have an opportunity to sign him. Now, if they sign him, there's a calculated choice. He has to be signed to the active roster. I'm sure a lot of teams would love to get him on their practice squad. And maybe that's kind of the thought process here as well. Maybe nobody's going to make that claim and put him on the 53. And if he has his choice of practice squads, probably comes right back to New England. But New England's certainly making a choice here. I don't know if, Brian Horier's always a phone call away. So there's always that dynamic for the Patriots. But rolling with Mac Jones.
I think the really interesting layer is the Bill O'Brien connection. So now you can tap into, we know Nathan Peterman got cut.
Oh, God.
It's a connection in Houston.
Do it.
I'm just saying.
Nathan Peterman on the Patriots. Let's go.
Presuming they don't just bring back Bailey Zappe, but why would you cut a 4th-round pick if your intention was to bring him back and not carry another quarterback anyway? They'll go get somebody who's played in this offense before, and they'll push play and move on.
Because that's what they do.
Not the only young player who found himself off of a team that made a reasonable draft investment in him. Joey had 2 5th-round picks from this year's draft who did not make their teams. And they're both corners.
Makes it even more surprising.
Right. Darius Rush with the Indianapolis Colts. He was a top 150 pick. And then Kyu Blu Kelly. I don't know the pick for him off the top of my head. I can find it. But once upon a time, Kyu Blu Kelly was like a buzzy day 2, fairly early day 2 candidate in a lot of mock drafts at Stanford. And both of those guys not making their respective rosters is a surprise. And you see, 5th, 6th round picks each and every year that don't make their team. So it's not a huge surprise, but like 5th round's kind of getting up into that stratosphere where it does raise your eyebrow a little bit to be like, man, like they really couldn't get any traction going for themselves.
Yeah, they're both surprising to me. I guess maybe, well, no, I can talk myself in either one, but I like to start with Kyu Blu Kelly, who, like you mentioned, a lot of mock draft love for him, at least kind of early last year. And I understood it. I thought he had good tape at Stanford, NFL bloodlines, physical, he tackles.
Good athlete.
Yeah, I don't know. And that's the side of it where I've never met the guy. I don't know what his actual football intelligence is like. I don't know what his practice habits are like. And that all plays into it. It's not just, well, that was a really good player at Stanford that I thought had the makeup of a potential NFL starter. It's not just that. But I'm sure, he's going to get more opportunity, but that was definitely a head scratcher. And then, of course, Darius Rush, man, like the Colts, big time need at corner. They've really overhauled that room in a lot of ways with trading away Stephon Gilmore, losing Isaiah Rodgers, who's now an Eagle. So let's just wait for that to work out next year for Howie, right?
That'll turn out great for Philly next year.
I'm sure it will. But I watched Darius Rush had a pick 6 against the Bills in the opening preseason game. This wasn't a player worth keeping around. Again, it could lean back into those other dynamics that we are not privy to, but 2 very toolsy corners with some significant upside that had good college tape. Darius Rush, big time athlete with big time length. That's pretty much what the NFL's looking for. And the Colts, a team that you would think needs that, said, you know what? Goodbye.
I already called my shot with you in the pre-show. I'm looking at a team like Arizona, who the waiver wire is currently still predicated on last year's draft order. They're up there in the top 3.
Yep.
I've seen that cornerback room. I'll tell you what, I'd probably be claiming some of these corners and bringing them in, trying to see if I can uncover some acorns. But, Indianapolis, there's 2 rookies that beat out Darius Rush and Juju Brents, who was a 2nd round pick. So that one's not a surprise. Jalen Jones from Texas A&M was a 7th round pick.
I like Jalen too, man.
Yeah. So, that's the name there. There's 6 total corners. The 2 inside guys, Kenny Moore and Tony Brown. Tony Brown, formerly Alabama. Darrell Baker was the other one who Indianapolis fans have said, really came on strong in the preseason and this training camp. And he was an undrafted free agent in 2022 out of Georgia Southern. So they still got a lot of size. A lot of these guys, 6 foot plus, still got a lot of length. I don't know. If I were to cross-reference the Colts and the position of this team this year, and I'm looking, did we need to keep Drew Ogletree as a 5th tight end on the roster with Will Mallory, Kylan Granson, Mo Alley Cox, who I know might be on the way out. I know Jelani Woods is dealing with an injury right now, but is Drew Ogletree or Arlington Hambright, and I guess if you want to say offensive line, Carter O'Donnell, you would talk about offensive line depth and the needs there, like, okay, I get it. But that would have been a player I still would have tried to, because of his tools, I still would have tried to find a way to keep him on.
Jalen Jones, the name there that really stands out. I like that guy. 5-star recruit. I think there was 2 years ago, that Texas A&M secondary was really, really good. I like Jalen Jones. He's the silver lining here in this discussion. All right, folks, there was a bunch of trades that happened. We're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But first, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And folks, it's so easy to create a free job post over at LinkedIn Jobs. And then once you do, add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And then simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, Joe. So you have the full breakdown of the trades, correct?
Sort of.
Not the kicker ones.
Yeah, I think I got them.
Okay. Because I know we had done some pre-show prep and collecting, and obviously a you-know-what ton of information that we're sorting our way through here.
Over 900 cuts yesterday, Kyle. 900.
Just yesterday. So, what trade would you like to start with?
Let's start with the first one, which I think was Kelvin Joseph for Noah Igbonghene. A couple of first rounder and Noah Igbonghene was Kelvin Joseph a 3?
2.
So
I think Kelvin Joseph was a top 50 pick, if I remember.
Couple of high picks at corner, swapping teams. I feel like you're going to have more to say about this one than me, so go right ahead.
Yeah. Kelvin Joseph was drafted 44th overall in 2021. Noah Igbonghene was drafted 30th overall in 2020.
High picks.
Swap
them around. See if the change of scenery can work.
My bust for your bust, right? Noah's predominantly an outside corner. I don't think his instincts are going to put him in a position in Dallas to play on the inside. I think Kelvin Joseph probably has a little bit more appeal as an inside player. That's where the Dolphins are kind of needy right now, where you look at their cornerback room after Ramsey goes on IR. It's going to be Xavier Howard, Cater Kohu, who can play the nickel and will be the nickel when they go 3 corners. But then their other corners are Cam Smith, who I think as a rookie would benefit from being an outside guy and having a safety play over the top of him in all these Fangio split field coverages, and then Eli Apple. So I think having a little bit of a different body type in this room is probably helpful for Miami. And obviously there's the sting of the first-round pick status for Noah, and they threw him in the fire. Joe, you remember Noah Igbonoghene's first reps. Because when Byron Jones went down against Buffalo in that, week 2 game in 2020?
Mm-hmm.
And they trotted his rear end out there, and Stephon Diggs said, okay, here we go. Welcome to the league, buddy. And it never came back from there. His confidence never recovered. It sounds like he talked to training camp when I was down there. He really struggled with the weight of expectations, and being a first-round pick, and having to find himself through that. He was very transparent about that when he spoke with the media when he was made available. So I hope that the change of scenery will do good for Noah. He works really hard. He's a phenomenal athlete. The instincts in coverage just aren't there. And he was a former wide receiver who played 2 years of corner in Auburn. He's only 23 years old. I think it's a nice bet for Dallas on an elite athlete.
I didn't realize he's 23.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, young athletic player. That's the appeal for Dallas.
Yep.
And then you mentioned Kelvin Joseph provides a skill set for Miami that might be missing. I think there's probably some salary stuff here that's interesting, right? I'm sure freeing up Noah's contract helps Miami a little bit.
Noah had marginal. I would venture to say it's probably a push. Miami gets an extra year of player control with Kelvin Joseph, 2 years remaining on his contract versus Noah's going into his 4th year. Miami had just like a little bit of dead money, but obviously they didn't exercise the 5th year option. So I'd say it's probably pretty close to a push, but Miami gets an extra year of player control with Kelvin Joseph.
So the next trade that went down was one that affects me. Boogie Basham, Bills' 2nd round pick in 2021, goes to the Giants along with a 7th round pick in 2025 for the massive return of a 6th round pick in 2025. So
future picks.
Future picks, future late day 3 pick swap for 2021 2nd round pick. I think for the Bills, moving on from Boogie Basham speaks to the depth that they have on the edge. I mean, it's obviously a missed pick by Brandon Beane. There's no question about it. And even if he made the Bills roster, he's at best defensive end 4. And when Von Miller's back, he's defensive end 5, which for a year 3 second round pick, that's not good enough, right?
Yeah.
So no matter how you spin it, it winds up being a bad pick for the Bills. And a curious one, because the year before they picked AJ Epinesa in the second round. And then the day before they picked Greg Rousseau in the first round. And so there was this influx of young defensive end talent. It looks like Greg Rousseau is going to be what they want him to be. Epinesa is coming along as a nice depth player, not a starter. And so they signed Leonard Floyd. They had Shaq Lawson, who's good for the Bills at least. And then Kingsley Jonathan's really the story here. UDFA out of Syracuse. He pushes Boogie Basham off and sends him to the Giants. The Bills get a little bit of cap space, not much. But obviously a dump here. They dumped the guy. And I thought Boogie had a good camp in preseason. He was playing a little faster, showing a little bit more hand usage. And I think for the Giants, versatile front with what Wink Martindale is going to do there, a guy in Boogie that I think can reduce and play inside. He's a high effort player. He's very athletic in terms of measured athleticism. I think he can help that team where they needed some help. So good. I think it's a good move for Basham to get more opportunity. But obviously there's a black eye here for the Bills with a recent second round pick and what the return was.
Is it fair to say probably the same thing that we're hoping happens with Isaiah Simmons playing for Wink is the same thing that happens to Boogie, where this is a little bit more of an attack oriented defense and you could just be a little bit more reactive and just go and just hope that the athleticism can take over a little bit more in that kind of stylistic defense?
Yeah, and I think for the Giants to be able to get those two players for nothing, right? I mean, let's face it, for nothing, is a nice little right before the season boost of talent for your defense. And I think I'm not going to call Wink's defense simple, but I think it is, like you mentioned, very attack oriented, and it allows athletes to be athletes.
Yeah,
and I think that helps both players, and so there's going to be this interesting dynamic for both Cardinals fans and Bills fans to see how their guys go do somewhere else. And it might be better. And it might just be a simple explanation as well. That's a better situation for the player. So then we got to Albert Okwuegbunam, and a big shout out to you. When he was coming through the process, we repped that pronunciation pretty. Yeah, him and Amani Owuarie, you know what I mean? Like somehow the pronunciation police can keep the cuffs in their back pocket. You're not coming after me for these guys.
Can I say one name just to set the record straight?
Yeah.
Dallas Goedert.
We always say Goedert.
Yeah, it's been an Eagles fan who must DM me 3 times every time
we talk about
Dallas Goedert.
It's an undercover pronunciation police officer, obviously.
Correct. Yes. So I'll say it 3 times the charm. Dallas Goedert. Okay. The message has been received. Please don't DM me anymore. At least about Dallas Goedert. You could DM me about other stuff, but don't DM me about Dallas Goedert.
Hey, look, it's an evolution of the pronunciation police. They're not just hanging, arresting people and putting them behind bars. We want to help you. I can appreciate that. Like, hey, you're not saying it correctly. Here's how you say it. How about that? As opposed to you're disrespecting this entire family's ancestry because you didn't say their name correctly. Okay. Albert Okwuegbunam was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. So it was Albert O and a 7 for a 5.
This is what you were hoping for with Boogie Basham.
This is what I was hoping for with Basham. Got the 6 instead.
It's a nice dice roll for Philly.
Absolutely.
And it was originally announced that Okwuegbunam was going to get cut. So this was one of those last few hours. Oh, Howie, let me pick up the phone. I'll call up Denver and see if we can work something out. It's a nice dice roll when you consider, Philly and the rest of their tight end room. They've been swinging on some, Grant Calcaterra was a guy that they drafted last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had such a weird path, retired, came back, went to SMU.
Oklahoma, and he was good, and then he retired, and then
the whole thing was weird.
And it was a mess, right?
Tons of concussions.
But yes, he was a 6th-round pick in 2022. And then Jack Stoll is the other tight end on the roster. So you get this influx of this big athletic player who hasn't really been able to put it together yet. I actually saw it was courtesy of Ben Albright. Greg Dulcich in 10 games has almost as many career receiving yards as Albert Okwuegbunam does.
Wow.
So for as much as the tools are there for Albert O, and we've known that since he came out of Missouri, putting it all together is incomplete. Now being behind Dallas Goedert and having a chance to not be a featured tight end, but be another athletic piece for Philly and what that offense is going to allow you to do. And Albert has size, so I don't think he's a great run blocker, but having the size with the quarterback run game and play action pass off of that, like I think this is a really good opportunity for Albert in the midst of Philly's tight end room, and it adds more upside. Where I think Jack Stoll's a high floor player, I don't think he's ever going to move the needle for you with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I like the trade for the Eagles. One more trade real quick here. Kendrick Greene, the recent third-round pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers, started all of the games as a rookie. He's now a Houston Texans. The Texans sending a 2025 sixth-round pick to Pittsburgh. And so we've seen Houston, and obviously a lot of this has to do with Kenyon Greene, first-round pick last year. He's out for the year. Hate to see that. And Houston's been super deliberate with this offensive line. The extension for Tunsil, extension for Howard. They traded for Jack Mason.
And they extended him, I think.
Yeah, they're not messing around with the O-line. Pittsburgh Steelers fans are going to tell you that Kendrick Greene stinks, right? I mean, I've already seen this on the timeline. Like, they're so happy to move on from him. Young, toolsy player, a situation where I think they really care about offensive line. I'm not saying the Steelers haven't cared about it, but sometimes a little change of scenery. I'm optimistic for him, an athletic guy coming out of Illinois.
How about Pittsburgh being in a position to, in consecutive days,
unbelievable,
trade Kendrick Greene and Kevin Dotson?
Unbelievable. Yeah, they got real serious about the O-line in Pittsburgh as well. So stash the O-line. It's a good thing.
What I think is interesting about the Kendrick Greene trade, and I know we got to go to our next segment, is you said it was a 2025 6, right?
Yep.
What world are we living in where Dan Feeney nets a better return? Because the Dolphins got a 2024 6 from Chicago for Dan Feeney. And Kendrick Greene, you got to wait a year to get the 6th-round pick.
I don't know. But
wild.
The point being, get offensive linemen,
protect
yourself, and then trade away the stuff you don't need because teams pay for it.
If they're moderately athletic and they can play more than one spot, you can trade that player every year.
Yeah. So do it. All right. Stick with us, folks. We were going to talk about that Jonathan Taylor guy and the nothing burger that happened yesterday. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
Colts fans are upset with me, Joe.
I see a little rivalry brewing.
I don't think so.
No, you don't think so? I feel like they're mad at you.
I'll just wait until Jonathan Taylor leaves for next to nothing and make one comment, and that'll be it.
Go ahead.
Because Jonathan Taylor don't want to play for you. And, like, the dynamics of this situation, I know it's centered around money. I know it's not really Jim Irsay. I know it's the agent that's come in and has become the piñata in the press for turning this team first guy against the shoe, right? And that's the book, is this agent has corrupted Jonathan Taylor's mind. But guess what? He just signed this agent. This is going to be his representation. And Jonathan Taylor, between the ankle and then the mysterious back injury that we needed to rehab away from the team, and you give him permission to go out and get a trade, and there's two teams. There's the mystery team. I've heard some whispers who the mystery team is, but not with enough confidence to say anything here. Miami's obviously very interested, so I was following this very closely. And then the trade deadline comes and goes, and the Colts never feel like they got a substantial offer, so they put Jonathan Taylor on the PUP, and we can revisit this at the trade deadline after Jonathan Taylor doesn't play the first 4 weeks of the season, and now you're trading for half a season instead of a full season. Okay.
The value's not going to be as strong.
Correct. What team is
desperation?
What team is going to give you more at the trade deadline?
I wouldn't think that would be true. But at the same time, I mean, Christian McCaffrey got a pretty good return last year for Carolina.
Yes, he did.
So
I think the best case scenario for Indianapolis, if you're going to be committed to moving on, is that you get the same caliber offers that you get now. But Stephen Holder from ESPN is going on Indianapolis radio saying the Colts are asking for Jalen Waddle and a mid-round pick for Jonathan Taylor.
that's just nuts, right?
It's insane.
Waddle's the best chip there. Waddle's a more valuable NFL player than Jonathan
Taylor.
Would
need to send Jonathan Taylor and a pick in return for Jalen Waddle, not the other way around.
Yeah, like in a meaningful pick.
Correct. On early
like a 4, a 3 or 4. Like I'm also not even having that conversation. If I'm interested in trading for Jonathan Taylor and you start mentioning the word Jalen Waddle, I'm hanging up the phone. Like, get out of here with that.
Yep. And I know Dolphins fans are frustrated because there's been this pursuit of all these running backs, and Jonathan Taylor comes and goes at a self-imposed deadline by the Colts. You don't want to get in business with that. Absolutely not. So the Colts, it feels like the Colts weren't really serious about trading them all along. And that's fine. But like, this isn't going to just go away. This isn't going to resolve itself.
Well, if you trade him, it does, and they've decided to not do that.
But if you're fielding offers for a trade and you're not really serious about trading him because you don't really want to trade him, like the longer this goes, the worse your leverage is going to get.
They have to be sitting back hoping for injuries and desperation.
But Joe, the Colts fans are telling you, and some in the Colts beat say the Colts don't want to trade Jonathan Taylor.
Well, so here's the other side of this, right? I mean, right now, Jonathan Taylor is the hot name in the running back markets for a trade. And I know that the Titans are going to go 17-0, but what if they don't? And Derrick Henry's now on the trade block. And what if things are getting sloppy with the Raiders and they want to move on from Jacobs and he becomes on the trade block? I mean, there's other guys here that you can consider, not to mention Kareem Hunt's still unsigned. Leonard Fournette is still unsigned. So if you really need a running back, obviously the best one is Jonathan Taylor. That's the most attractive one by $1 billion. But
I think Josh
the waiting
Jacobs
game might not
really
help him
in case to being a more attractive player.
Maybe.
He's also young. He had less college mileage on his tires.
Way less.
He does not have the injury questions that Jonathan Taylor does now because he's going to start on PUP, and we have to ask ourselves: is he really hurt? Is he just holding in?
We'll see.
It's a mess, but I would say this to Colts fans: you should be just as frustrated by this, and not for the fact that Jonathan Taylor doesn't want to play for your team. And I get it. Nobody who's a fan of any team wants to have people come on a show and say your team screwed up. So I get it. But if you look at this objectively through where the Colts are, there's all these headlines. The Colts are the youngest team in the NFL, 24.6 years old. They don't have any players over the age of 30 on their roster for their 53-man roster. And you have a rookie quarterback and you've got a running back in a final year of his contract that you want to pay, but you don't want to pay until you see him in the new system and you see that he's healthy. And then you give him a permission to trade because he don't want to play for you anymore because he wants to go somewhere else and get paid. And that's how you handle the trade negotiations. So then you're going to keep him on PUP. It's what are we doing?
We're doing nothing.
And I don't see the pathway for this just going away. Like, how much money do you have to give Jonathan Taylor for him to be like, okay, you're right. I'm happy
17.
Right.
17 per. That's probably what it takes.
And if you do that, okay, then you can have your cake and eat it too. And I'll tip my cap for you guys for going through the stormy waters of what you've been going through. But this is a high risk. There's a lot of ways that this can combust and blow up in your face.
Don't want any blowing up with Lucas Oil Stadium. You know what I mean?
What happens if Taylor doesn't play at all? What happens if Taylor stays on the PUP and his contract doesn't toll? And now he's in his fifth year, but he's really in the fourth year of his contract, and you're in this position all over.
They'd have to activate him and then put the ball in his court, whether or not he's going to participate.
Right.
That's what they'll do. Wouldn't you think?
Do you want that kind of toxic?
I don't want it. I wouldn't want it.
Right.
There's a lot of things that I wouldn't want with the Jonathan Taylor stuff. So it's complicated.
It's very complicated. But we just got done talking about with guys who have not been successful. Sometimes a chain of injury is best for everybody. And it still, from my perspective as somebody who looks at team building across all teams, not just trade him to somebody else. Like, don't trade him to Miami. I don't care. But if you're a Colts fan, I'd be pretty annoyed this morning.
Jonathan Taylor, 46 career games, averaging over 100 yards from scrimmage per game. I think he's got like 38 touchdowns in 46 games. So he's a star, man. Superstar.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
We'll see.
That's not good for the dynasty owners and people that did their fantasy drafts already. They're pissed. You're talking about people that are mad. Those people are mad.
First 4 weeks at least. We'll see where it goes from here. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We are Locked On NFL Scouting. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. There's a lot of action still coming, a lot of roster churning, so we'll be reacting to all of that as it comes as well. We'll see if we get any other trades this week as well. Hope to react to some of those. Those are always fun. But big time of year across the NFL as we get ready for the start of the 2023 NFL season. 8 days away today, Joe. 8 days away from the season.
Can't wait.
Can't wait.
Our Lions, baby. Our Lions.
Our Lions. That's right. We are out of here. Hope to talk to y'all again. You can find us on YouTube wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Peace.